Based on your successful career in neurology, you also acted as an assistant professor at the Yale University.
Still am.
You still are, sorry. And the insights that you got from this book, is there something that you would recommend to governments and parents to protect the well-being of future generations?
I think that the only thing I can recommend to parents is devote your lives to your children. And if you don't have children, devote your lives to others, ideally to the younger generation, or as much as you can, because that's going to give you the most joy, it's going to give you the most reward. It's going to give you the most reward at the end of the day. And in the rest of your time, devote your lives to your friends. Because every single study, ending with perhaps the most important studies that are done by Harvard, I think they go under the name of happiness index or satisfaction studies, and they've been doing this since 1930, and they've been tracking thousands of families over several generations. And they found that the single most important factor for success, and that success is financial, it's medical, it's health, but most of all, it's satisfaction, is the number of real biological friends you have, anywhere between 3 and 7. It's the people who have 3 to 7 friends that they can see, sit down with, talk to with face to face, embrace, have an argument with, whatever. Those are the people who do well in every single category. And that is the key to our success. That should be the focus of government. It should be the focus of education, and it should be the focus of parents, developing friendships.
So, for example, if there is any example of a government which is doing their job well, I know the example of Singapore, which is like a benchmark for a lot of governments now in terms of longevity, because their lifespan is increasing, and also the happiness of their citizens is increasing compared to other parts of the world. Do you think that this can be a good example how government can act? Because they are well known for being quite strict with some matters. They are happy to forbid things. They are happy to, put very harsh measures sometimes, fines and any consequences for brands that act in the industry, to restrict a little bit the traditional capitalism as we know it from the US. Do you think that this is a good example?
I think it comes down to the society in question. It's a very open question. It's a very difficult answer. Singapore is a multicultural society, but it's predominantly Asian in terms of its roots and in terms of its approach. And Asian societies are typically more cohesive, and right from the get-go, they've emphasized the collective strength of society over the power of the individual. When we go to the other extreme of the United States, the absolute opposite is true. That was a country that was founded on the strengths of the individual, which had to be prioritized to the greatest degree possible, basically. So the Singapore model, I don't think can or ever will be, at least in the near future, implemented in a society like the United States. It all comes down to, however, adopting a system, some sort of a system of checks and balances that is relevant. And the key word there is checks and balances. What you said is very true, that in the societies that are in trouble, they've put those checks and balances to the side, where they've tried to, in some way, prioritize equality over talent, equality over success. And that's a very, very very poor equation to make, because, as I mentioned before, equality, forced equality, homogeneity, has no place in terms of prioritization among human relations. Now, I'm not saying, I don't want people to get this wrong and say, well, he's okay for abuse, he's okay for discrimination. Absolutely not. That's equality before the law. But that's where it should end. People who are simply better at something should be given the privilege of taking that to the end. But then they need to turn around and realize where they came from and invest that capital, whether it's product capital or intellectual capital, into respect and into helping those others raise the bar collectively. But it shouldn't be a process from the bottom up. It should be a process from the top down, and that's a very delicate balance. And we're seeing the destruction of that process, particularly in the United States, particularly in elite colleges, where you're having things like forced admissions, and you're having all sorts of misplaced policies by the institutions where they're coddling students to make sure that everybody's equal and to make sure that they're comfortable. You're not preparing anybody for life. That way, life is not about being equal. Life is not about being comfortable. Life is about being forced to confront challenges, being forced to confront uncomfortable things, and learning how to deal with those in the first place.
But on the other hand, we as a society, you confirm that in your work, we fail. We currently fail in our responsibility to raise our kids, to protect them, because we are giving them a substance which is highly addictive, making them dumber, decreasing their quality of life. Any kind of restriction is always paid by a loss of freedom. And I know that you personally have your family has a very bad experience with that, because you come from Czechoslovakia originally, and now Czech Republic. And that is a former communist country. So we know what was happening here when there was a loss of freedom. Is this a good direction to forbid some actions, forbid some substances, technologies? Or where is the level when we keep the freedom and the responsibility of the individual, and where is the responsibility of the government on the right par?
Yeah, you've used the word freedom several times, and I think you used it in several different contexts. There's a difference between freedom and being free, and then there's a difference between freedom and having the opportunity to do something, and that's a big difference. Being free we can look at that from a sort of democratic basic point of view, and I don't think that that's what you're talking about. I think the question here is being given the opportunity, and I think those opportunities should be based on qualifications. I don't think that they should be based on anything else. I think they should be based on, if you're good enough to get it, you should get it. If there's too many of you applying for it, then the best should get it. If there's not enough of you applying for it or going for it, then the opportunity itself basically needs to be readdressed. That's the going in step, and then there has to be the coming out step. Once you achieve that goal or achieve that success, it should not be confined and used indefinitely by that group of people that are involved. Somehow or another, it should basically be invested and trickled back in some shape, way, or form. The complete deformation of this principle is seen by the fact that we as mankind have accepted that there are 8 living human beings who walk this earth today, who together have more money than 50% of all of mankind. The top 8 richest people on earth have more money than the bottom 50% of all of mankind. That in and of itself, that one sentence should be enough to stop mankind in its tracks and say, let's at least do something about that. let's take 90% of what they have, because they'll still each have $10 billion, and start to redistribute it among the rest of us. Why isn't anybody even thinking about the immorality of the basic disbalances that already exist? Just dealing with that alone would completely open up the floodgates to everything else. Why? Because the human brain is structured in such a way that we prioritize, the poor person in South Africa prioritizes the idea that he can become the ninth person.
So it's a dream.
It's a dream. It's a dream.
Okay.
And on the other hand, even if that person is, God forbid, dying from hunger, they'll still prioritize that dream.
But wasn't it always the case that there were a small group of privileged ones who were actually,
yes, but it's never
ruling the world?
reached such dramatic proportions.
So what you're saying, and you mention it also in your book, that these individuals are stronger than governments.
Oh, they're way stronger than governments. Governments, by and large, are now unable to keep up with the pace of the psychological pace of planet Earth, based on global internet dependence. And that dependence is such that paradoxically we've never been as fragmented in our entire existence as we are today. We have instant communication. I can instantly look up the price of eggs in China in 3 seconds, but I simply can't do a single thing, whether I'm a person or a government, to influence the Arab-Israeli conflict. Everybody's, for instance, all major governments have been trying to step in, and so on and so forth. And of course, they're not able, and they won't be able to, because the root of the problem lies somewhere entirely else.
Mm-hmm.